Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to this webinar on the value of a composable digital twin. I'm Peter van Skalkwyk, and I've been around this space for a while. I am the CEO of XMPro and probably the chief technology enthusiast in the organization. I'm also the chair for the Natural Resources Working Group in the Digital Twin Consortium. And prior to that, I was the chair for the Digital Twin Interoperability Task Group in the Industrial Internet Consortium. Now, you'll probably agree with me that 2020 will certainly go down in history as one of the most disruptive, uncertain, and transformative years for both organizations and people in those organizations worldwide. Or as one of my learned friends explained it to me, he said, overnight, it exposed the systemic fragility in the operating capabilities of enterprises and organizations. That's quite a mouthful, but it really just means there were a lot of challenges, a lot of confusion, and many organizations and people struggled to deal with the impact of what we saw in 2020. I think you'll also agree with me that we've seen unprecedented acceleration of digital technology adoption. And we've also seen a lot of behavioral transformation, again, within organizations and businesses, but also in people in those organizations and businesses throughout this pandemic. We've seen 5 years of digital transformation happen in less than 5 months, and that's according to a number of industry analysts. The future reality is that the rate of change will probably only increase. Professor Peter Frisk, who consults to large organizations as well as governments, and he specializes in what is called innovative business futures, says that we will probably see more change the next 10 years than what we've seen in the last 250. Now, that is really exciting, but it's also really scary. What is even more sobering is the fact that the future change that Peter Frisk was talking about is actually here right now. So right now we see long-term planning visions from organizations like Gartner extend to 6 to 8 years, which is really just around the corner in business. And it should already be on your strategic planning horizon. Everything else is shorter term, as you can see here, and these are significant emerging technologies that will change how we work. The impact of everything else that is on here is already here, and it should already be in your short-term plans. The challenge that many organizations face is that the traditional business models were designed when computerized business was still in its infancy. IT was seen as a department that supplied the computers, the servers, the IT nerds that help you when you got stuck on your notebook or if the printer didn't work. And the reality is that even though IT improved business efficiency, it was never the platform for business. And business users were and are frustrated with digital transformation plans that are more about digitizing, so getting things into digital format and getting it onto iPads and tablets and mobiles. So just digitizing rather than changing business models to be able to use IT to drive and be the platform for this transformational change. What we also see is that it's not just internal, but externally, there's a lot of pressure on organizations, and we have less time to respond. Companies don't last that long anymore, and the risk of a rigid, inflexible business is really that you will be extinct. Lifespan have gone from 75 years in 1950 to just 15 years in 2020. And the other sobering statistic is that 52% of Fortune 500 companies that were in 2000 are not around in 2020. So if you think about how Blockbuster got Netflixed, that is what's happening to a lot of organizations. And what I'm thinking about quite often is what will the average lifespan be in 2040. Now, we also come from a kind of past 3 decades where everything was dominated by large-scale monolithic technology platforms such as ERPs and CRMs, and it was all about stability, efficiency, driving process efficiency, optimization. And again, it was mostly focused around improving efficiencies in processes. The problem going forward, or the challenge going forward, is that these systems are typically very rigid and don't support the pace of change that we see. It may have worked for the change in the last 250 years, but it certainly doesn't support the agility, innovation, and experimentation that is needed going into the future. This is a quote from Gartner on the enterprise architecture models that are needed for the future. And according to them, developing a software engineering strategy that is fit for the future is a huge struggle, as business landscapes are constantly shifting and user demands are increasing exponentially. Application leaders should demand adherence to composable enterprise architecture in their business applications. Now, this is just one quote from Gartner organization. We see that in best-of-class businesses doing this. What you'll find is, or you may find yourself in knee-deep in these challenges, as I mentioned before. And typically, we see two approaches to addressing this. The one is, how do we fix the problem? How do I become the fixer? And this is where the digital transformation and digital technologies can support going through a approach, as was mentioned on the previous slide, of composable applications. It gives us the ability to fix and change as we go. But we also have the fishers. So we have the fixers and the fishers. The fishers are really where business can exploit these opportunities that are there. So how do we fish while this is happening, while we're fixing on the other end? Because this will be a continuous way of things happening going forward. And in actual fact, we've seen massive floods in Australia, where I'm doing this from at the moment, over the last couple of weeks, where a year ago it was massive fires. We then had, or bushfires. We then had COVID, and now we've got flood. So the environment is definitely a lot more fluid. Things happen quickly, and how do we fish while that has happened? How do we make our business agile? Managing this or doing this actually requires 3 key business changes, and the first one is that there's a certain that you need to be able to use a modular approach for applications that can be composed or recomposed on demand. So you need to have that ability to respond quickly. The next part is that business and technology should be closer aligned, and it should be focused on how do we enable business experts, those that can fish, to support them to be able to do it quicker and faster. And in the past, the systems that we had was not really designed for this. It was not enabling business users to make them self-sufficient. The third part is around traditional solutions reduce the capability for fast decision making to make the best decisions quickly and being contextualized and informed, and that's really what the business users need in order to drive or to be able to adapt at the pace that we see. And for that, the best way of approaching this is to create a composable, reusable approach, which Gartner refers to as intelligent composable business applications. Different analysts call them different names, essentially the same background or the same thing. So before we look at composable digital twins, let's have a quick look at what a composable business application is. I'm using the Gartner example here, but there are this is actually based on, or it has its roots in SOA and microservices, and it's being adopted by best-in-class organizations in different ways. It is also it starts with using traditional legacy and business applications, as we know, creating a data fabric that sits at the bottom to support this, but then building these packaged business capabilities, PBCs, package business capabilities around certain areas. How do we compose? How do we put some of these capabilities together at this level, and then have a composition platform where we can string some of these together, compose with them, and those platforms typically handle the integration, composition, orchestration, development, as well as the front end for it, so that users can create these specific composed applications. You can think of using the capabilities that's within an ERP or CRM. For many organizations, they only use a good 20%. Another 30% might be used a lot less frequently, and 50% of the functionality actually never gets used. The objective with package business applications is or business capabilities is to actually take the key capabilities that you need and be able to compose highly relevant and reusable and agile applications very quickly. An example of this, and before we get into twins, I thought I'd just share an example of analytics package business capability. And in this instance, you'll see we take capabilities like reporting and package that, as well as self-service analytics, predictive modeling, and all of these are what is referred to as the specific capabilities that are then packaged together. And what makes a package business capability in terms of characteristic, it's not about the technology, but it's about the capability. So it's not looking at what is the underlying technology behind this, but what is the business capability that I need in order to address a specific business challenge. So these package business applications are almost encapsulated software components that describe a well-defined business capability, and it can be recognized by a business user. So something like a leak detection model from a prediction point of view. That is a classic package business capability. Well-designed package business capability are typically modular. So they consist in a modular fashion, and you can they're also autonomous. So typically self-sufficient, and they would stand on their own. And I'll show you some examples at the end of the presentation of how or what some of these look like. Also orchestrated, so you can compose them and put them in different sequences to address a specific. So you can assemble the process flows or the transactions through these APIs, so that they are basically packaged for composition, and then they are easily discoverable. So someone who's a business user again would very easily recognize that capability without necessarily understanding all the underlying technology that sits with that. Now, this doesn't only apply to analytics, it also applies to other areas in the business. And kind of this example just shows where we can start with an application like application package business capability, where we have patient records and everything that's sit around that. We may then have a digital twin component, which might be an infection detector. The analytics component would handle infection rate predictions, and then also on the data side, we might be building a data repository of some information that we want to do in terms of infection incidents or whatever the case might be. So this just shows you how these work together. It's not a single type. We actually compose an application by using some application, digital twin, analytics, and other data or other package business applications together. It's kind of like the Lego bricks that kids use to build or create their own compositions, which is only limited by their imagination. The range of modular bricks enable the kids to, for example, create motion experience by just packaging the wheels, and it's probably already got the battery and the motor and everything packaged in this. I can clip this in within a matter of seconds to create that capability of motion in this application that I have here. The other benefit is I can now build it the way that the manufacturer describes it on the box, or I can adapt it and change the sequence of things so that I have my own creation. In actual fact, they can create their own I can use the same box of capabilities and build a 4x4 vehicle in this example. Instead of having the Formula One racing car, reuse many of these components and build a completely different use case or application using many of the same composable. I may need a few extra blocks that are not around here, like the bull bar or one of the others, and I may leave out one or two of these, but in essence I can reuse or recompose very quickly based on the changing environment that I have. When we and understanding what composable business applications give us, and the package business capabilities that exist within them, we can also look at how this now starts applying to digital twins. So as you can see on the digital twin, we have the physical side of things as well as the digital. And as we start packaging these capabilities like location, scheduling, leak detection, these are all package business capabilities that make it really easy to create new, or to make our digital twin applications address very specific business cases. Now, one of the challenges that we sit with when we look at digital twins is that there's even more complexity than what we see with traditional ERP or CRM challenges. The good news, though, is that it also naturally lends itself to composability. And I honestly believe that it's the only way to build scalable digital twins is to make them composable. Otherwise, you will remain stuck with a few discrete twins in pilot projects. So you may end up with a few sample ones in pilot projects, or the dreaded pilot purgatory, where this actually never moved beyond that stage because it's not composable. I can't take this part, plug it into a assembly. So going from a gearbox into a ball mill on a mining plant, and then taking that mining plant, actually making part of the overall processing plant for the mine, or a factory, or a power plant, or whatever the application for this. So the challenge with digital twins is it requires this capability of being able to be composed. So going from a single node, a single entity, into a assembly, and that assembly actually then getting into a system of assembled components. Again, it lends itself naturally, but also if you don't keep this composable approach in mind, you will probably get stuck by not moving beyond this capability over here. And the reality that we also see is that, and again, looking at some of the stats coming out of analysts, is that for larger organizations, we'll probably see them managing 1,000 digital twin templates and 1 million digital twin instances by 2025. And this is pretty recent research as well. So again, the scale at which this needs to be done, the only way that you couldn't do this, there's no other way to manage scalability and quick time to value if you don't have a composable architecture. So it is not just about the single entity, but it's about the whole ecosystem, the whole environment, and how it all fits together. And this all needs to be composable. As this use case may change, this environment around it will need that same flexibility and ability to change. Now, this is all well and great, but we need to be able to explain what the value of all of this is in monetary terms. So when we go to stakeholders and budget holders and get money for these projects, we need to be able to explain the value of these. And the simplest way that I found is using the World Economic Forum's total value at stake model. And in that model, kind of two dimensions, which is what is for the industry or your specific business, and what is the other one? What is the value for the larger society or society at large? And the first one is really around value migration. So being able to create new business models, do that digital transformation, and get new revenue from new digital services that we didn't have in the past. And also creating marketplaces for these composed capabilities, and how do we market and sell those to be able to make it easier for others. Then there's the traditional approach from what value do we add by just increasing what we're already doing. So how do we exploit and move faster around current short-term opportunities, but also how do we eliminate costs? So how do we make our plants or how do we improve the reliability, availability, and all of those metrics that we do right now, but how can we do it quicker, faster, and respond to the changes much quicker? Then from a value at stake for society point of view, the impact of the savings that come with it, but also, what is the impact of being able to make better decisions faster, and that whole agility around decision support with a composable digital twin approach. Now, as I mentioned at the start, the focus is really how can we get business experts to be able to fish? How do we train or bring new skills to subject matter experts to be able to compose these digital twins themselves? What is the value in being able to do that? And then obviously the broader impact is making sure that we have safer work environments, especially in the asset intensive industries where we operate. And then lastly, in terms of the impact on the environment, reducing emissions and all the sustainability metrics that we can do and respond again pretty quick on that. A lot of organizations are putting out 2030 goals in terms of their sustainability goals. It's not that far away, so you really need to make sure that you have that ability to compose the green elements into the current digital twins and package that capability and make it scalable. The other benefit of a composable digital twin approach is that you can basically build the twins from the bottom up and you can see immediate returns. We often see that companies start with these large scale projects that want to address these really big, large, complex problems. Now, quite often the result of that is that the project team has moved on 3 years later. There's been no returns. A composable approach actually help you to start. It's a fast, affordable, and easy to use way to start building up from the bottom up and actually get quick returns which fund the larger projects. So for example, in a mid-sized organization, if you've got 25 engineers and each of them build 20 composed digital twins or applications, and each of those have an impact of $2 million, you very quickly get to an overall impact of $1 billion, which is very possible, and we've seen that with our customers in terms of being able to deliver that. Then once you've got that better done, you've got the skills and you've built enough packaged business capabilities in all these individual ones and reuse them to start expanding to more complex and advanced ones, where we can now address some of these bigger challenges in the organization. So first do the easy wins before we get to some of the big bets. It's one of the really big benefits of using a composable architecture. So how does this all apply to digital twins? Now, from a model approach, it's nothing other than APIs and integration as we know it, but what's fundamentally different is how this is packaged together in terms of standalone units that can then be composed. And the key aspect here is that there's a composition environment that allows me to be able to put all of this together. So I can compose my twins in an environment, and they are done in such a way, the wrappers around the APIs are done in such a way that it makes it a lot easier to compose and almost visually program this. One of the things that we see with digital twins, and it's also covered in the Ultimate Guide to Digital Twins that's on our website, is kind of the data models and the data sources that we see in digital twins are pretty well understood and defined. So, and these are the 6 characteristics. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. You can have a look on our website and get access to the Ultimate Guide to Digital Twins, where we go into more detail on this. But from a digital twin perspective, these are the key data areas or data sources. Now, what we want to do with that is actually put it into a framework similar to what we saw earlier around the composable business applications, but make it very specific to composable digital twins. And then use this, the data fabric that sits at the bottom, use this as a key element of that, and provide these services so we can compose and package some of these things together, still using our legacy OT and engineering applications, and also the business and IT applications, plug into them, bring it in either at the platform level or at the data fabric level, but really creating these packaged business capabilities that address very specific elements in it. And through that, we can compose applications like, for example, intelligent building energy optimization, or blast furnace casting guidance, or first pass yield in a production manufacturing environment, or tailings and environmental monitoring in mining and some of the other extractive industries. So these are the composed applications. They're kind of micro apps in the business. It addresses a very specific business challenge, and I can very quickly change these and make them adaptable to changing environments by just reusing the capabilities that are packaged in here. And the way that we do that in XMPro is, on the one hand, with our data stream, so at the integration level, and being able to bring in to integrate, compose and orchestrate is a key element of this, and having packaged business capabilities here and being able to drag it on. And on the other hand, being able to create the UX and an environment in a similar way, where we've packaged capabilities that sit around this to be able to do just that. Again, taking these packaged business capabilities and integrated there. Now, some of the examples, and we'll run you through this in a practical example on our software, just to demonstrate that. But some of our packaged business capabilities, as you can see here, there's quite a range of them where I don't have to understand I don't have to rewrite the code to be able to connect, or for example, an Azure smart contract. I can just literally drag that capability onto the canvas and put it and wire it up with the rest of and compose and integrate and orchestrate, rather than write all the code that sits behind that. So being able to compose and reuse capabilities like that makes it very powerful and very quick to adapt when we need to make changes to our system. Then on the UX side, very similar. So if I want something in Unity, I can just drag the Unity component on and just wire it to the data and the model, so that I can reuse this capability, or being able to compose very quickly using this packaged business capability. Before we go into the software and I show you some examples, I just also like to put out a word of caution in terms of packaged business capabilities. Be careful that it's not like the wall socket and plug situation that we see across the world, where it may work in your own environment but doesn't work anywhere else. You need to be able to make sure that these things can also connect across different systems. So it doesn't help that it only works in one area. So when you look at a packaged business capability, it needs to be extensible across different applications. The way that we do that, and again, I honestly believe this is the only way to respond and scale to the more complex challenges, is with a composable digital twin approach. And the first step is to do is at the integration layer, where we have package capabilities. So be able to compose data streams using these package capabilities and then integrate data sources to that. The second step is to be able to compose the overall applications from these to provide a real-time view. And then lastly, how to also compose and reuse recommendations that trigger when certain critical things happen. You don't want to recreate all the prescriptive support in the business. You actually want to be able to compose certain capabilities around that, or package some capabilities around that, and then compose it when you need it. So with that, let me show you an example of how this works. So I will move on to, and I'll just maximize this. So I'll start with the data stream area. As we mentioned, this is the first part of the process. In step one, it's where we integrate data into the system, and I will just use a very quick, simple example. This is not a full demonstration of our solution or software. If you do want, there is a link on our website. You can see a full demonstration of all the capabilities of the software. I'm just going to touch on some of the key elements and show you how some of those capabilities are packaged. And I'm just going to use an example of a pump condition monitoring solution that runs on something like Azure Digital Twin. And we have these different capabilities that we've packaged. So we call them agents, but they have different functions that they perform, or so they have certain capabilities. They could either be listeners, so they listen for real-time data, which is something like the telemetry. They could provide context, so a different capability. They could transform data. It could provide machine learning capability, and I'll drill down into this a little bit more. It could be things like functions like fast Fouriers or things like that, which again is a packaged capability, and then run recommendations and different actions. So these are all packaged capabilities, and we'll drill down on them a little bit more. But just to quickly explain the process that we have here, we're taking pump telemetry data, do some calculations for that, push it into Azure Digital Twin, and also getting make and model and context, combining that with the telemetry data and running some engineering recommendation rules that sit behind it. Very simple example, but there are a number of package capabilities in here that I can reuse. So one of them, for example, is the pump telemetry. So this brings in real-time data from a data source. Now I don't have to understand how to code MQTT or anything like that. I can just literally hook it up to what the endpoint is, where it sends the data, and it will then expose the fields that it's got, and I can reuse or I can use these to and again, in this one, this is the data that comes from the pump telemetry. I can either use all of them, or I can remove just the ones that I want or need. Now the way that I get that on is I can literally drag the MQTT package business capability onto the canvas. Again, I don't have to know how to code this. I can just drag it on and use it. Likewise with the and I'll just go to this one, Azure Digital Twin. The capability here is around being able to interrogate or automatically publish to Azure Digital Twin. But as you'll see, we don't only do Azure Digital Twin here, we also push the real-time telemetry into time series insights, so I can get some time series data if I want to. Again, I don't have to be able to code any of this. I don't have to understand how to do this. In actual fact, being able to create new resources on Azure. If you're not a qualified Azure engineer, cloud engineer, this is not a easy task. We've made it much simpler by being able to create new resource instances. For anyone that's tried this, you'll understand exactly the value of having this package business capability, where I don't have to be a subject matter expert, or sorry, a cloud deployment engineer. I could be a subject matter expert like a reliability engineer, process engineer, a geologist, or someone like that who just wants to set up a twin in this service. Again, this is a package business capability. I can drag it on. I can build digital twins for different solutions. It could be a pump assembly, it could be turbines, it could be buildings, it could be anything. So I could upload new models here. I don't have to understand how to create or write code for Azure Digital Twin. I can literally just reuse this package business capability in order to do that. And then things like Azure Digital Time Series Insights. If I want to push the data into that, I can do that as well. And one of the benefits of doing this approach is we can discover, for example, the data that comes from this package business capability. Remember that challenge with the different wall sockets, where I have different systems that speak different inputs and outputs. What I can do with this is on this yellow arrow that I've mapped, that I have here, it actually shows me the payload that comes in the arrow. So these are the options that I have that comes in via the arrow. And this is the service that I interrogated on the other side. So I looked at what the wall plug needs, and this is that multi-plug capability that now make it easy to take this format into this format, and the two can talk to each other. Very powerful capability, especially when it comes to package business capability. So each of these can stand on its own. And again, it might be something like I want to bring in a Python environment. So I can drag on a Python script and wire it into the process. And I'm not going to do that right now, but I can wire this in and do something. Now, this means I'm handling a specific error capability that comes out of this, and I can reuse this capability very easily. So this is on the data stream and integration side. Again, this is not a full presentation, but it gives you an overview. What I briefly want to touch on, and I'm just mindful of time, is our capabilities around the composition environment. So for that digital twin that we just saw, so if I, for example, go to this view over here, so this is a front end, I can compose and set up my environment here, and I'll show you all this application again in a very similar way. In this instance, I'm bringing in data from Unity. I've got this Unity view of a pump, the real-time data coming out of Azure Digital Twin. I've got some information coming out of my ERP. Now, all of these are drag and drop components from a composability point of view. So in this instance, I might be doing predictive maintenance on, or it might be Impellerware, or it might be, it doesn't really matter what the use case is. I can very quickly adapt and change based on a business problem that I may have and reconfigure this in order to be able to do that. Now, the way that I do that, again, this is this capability around packaging, and what you'll see. So as the subject matter expert, I can't change this one because it's running, and I'll get in trouble if I screw it up, but I can drag on certain capabilities. You know, it might be something like Power BI. I think there's a Power BI, or it might be Azure Maps or anything like that. So again, package capabilities that I just drag on, and there's a whole, it could be Bentley, Autodesk, a broad range of these package capability, in addition to simpler ones like, or it might be Unity or Unreal Engine, or it might just be a grid or a circular gauge or something like that. It could be widgets, so you can compose and put together. So I could take this whole section over here. So this section, let's say I like this whole section and I want to save that. Won't be able to do it here because this is a live running one, but I could typically save this, share it with myself or others, and now I've published this capability. I've packaged this look and feel, and I can share it with myself, or I can use it for myself or share it with others. Again, very powerful capability from a composable digital twin aspect in order to create these composable UXs that are built, and with the data integration and everything that sits behind it. Likewise with, and I'll just use this example again. I'll go back to that pump, and likewise with something like the recommendations. I may have a form with certain information that I fill in, work order numbers, create instructions, or I could reuse this for everything that is similar. But this is the real-time data that triggered and put the red dot onto that screen. How I resolve it, I could have triage instructions, I could have discussions around this, I could have a timeline view on who did what when, and as well as some analytics on this. And I'm not sure what we have for this. As you can see, we had a whole bunch of different recommendation rules that triggered and fired for all of this. There's a whole section in the presentation or the demonstration video on recommendations, a really powerful capability inside XMPro. It is a package business capability, which is generically used as recommendations, but it's really, really powerful in terms of closing the loop. Digital twins are there to address a certain challenge. You're hiring a twin to do a certain job, and you want to make sure that you are able to close the loop, provide tell someone when something's happened, and do the notification and everything that sits behind that, but also then provide recommended actions, instructions, forms that needs to be filled in, and all of this needs to be is built in such a way that it's easily composable as well as reusable. So with that, hopefully that gives you an overview of what a composable digital twin is. And I will go to some questions and see if there are any questions around this. So let me just have a quick look here. So how granular should the capability be in order to be effectively packaged into a business capability? I think that's a great question. So it needs to be, according to that definition that I gave earlier, it needs to be able to stand on its own. So I need to be able to package, and if I just use an example here, I need to be able to package a capability where, for example, a fast fourier, I want to have that whole capability. So in terms of granularity, it needs to be able to stand on its own, and it might also be something like this Azure Digital Twin where it can do two things for me. So it really depends on the use case that you have. What I wouldn't do is make it so granular that it needs two or three together to actually make it work. So what is the lowest level or the smallest module that I can get to that would still be self-sustainable? So when I drag a fast fourier on, that I just need to pass it the parameters and it will give me an answer, and the rest of the flow can continue. So that's typically how we would look at composable or the PBC, the package business capability, something like leak detection or remaining useful life or something like that. It needs to have the smallest number of components that will actually address the capability and provide the full capability for that specific function that we are looking at. It doesn't have to address, so pump conmon, this whole condition monitoring, that is kind of, I wouldn't package this as a or have a whole package business capability. Or it might be that in your use case that would work, that you have this as the package business capability, but quite often we see that there are some nuances, some changes, and if you make it too big, it needs a lot of customization. Where with something where it is contained like this, it just makes it really easy to be able to drag it on and address my specific challenge. There's one more quick question. I appreciate the application of Gartner's high-level thinking into the real world. That being said, much of the presentation seems to reflect sort of the more forms-based approach. Asset-intensive industries will also require that digital twins support field user experiences. What I forgot to mention is all of this, what you see on the front end, if I just go back to what you see over here, all of this is available on mobile devices. So it is there, so you can take it into the field and it automatically, so as you can see, when we design this, you actually design, and again, from a business capability, we need to make sure that these things run in different environments. So it is designed so that a field service organization can use it. But the rest of the question is that they will require XR applications. So that's AR, VR, and all of that. Absolutely. So the same way that we are doing things like Unity and the others, expanding the business capability on a continuous basis. We have a team that just look at this, is how do we create more, whether I just want to see the AR and VR on my mobile device, or is it something that I want to put a headset like a HoloLens, or which right now is not that industrial, but there's a lot of development happening in that. And again, in the next 10 years, if we look back 10 years from now, we will see very different technologies, and yes, a package business capability around AR, VR is a critical aspect of that. So for us, and there are standards emerging around that. So we will, for us, the focus is to make sure that we continue the composability across the whole continuum of user experiences that are out there. Great question. Thank you very much. Also appreciate everyone's time on this. If anyone's got more questions, if you have a question around this, please feel free to reach out to me. Happy to address any questions on this. Again, have a look at the demonstrations on our website and look forward to seeing you on a continuation of this topic in future webinars. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.